Good morning and welcome to Do Buy Build Go. And this morning we're going to do a live stream because AMD finally released their Ryzen XT processors. So let's talk about those a little bit. And, is this something you want to own? Is this something that's worth your money? And, I don't know. I've got some thoughts about it and some opinions. So, more than anything, I'm hoping that this is good news that the stock market likes it. I own some AMD stock. I own multiple AMD systems, some Intel systems. So, I kind of think that I'm pretty impartial, and I look at these things really as from a value perspective, and really does it make sense for not only you as a user, but does it make sense that, are you going to get both short-term and long-term value? So yeah, let's talk about that. And if you're not watching this live, I'm going to put links to everything I talk about after I'm done with the live stream this morning. So feel free to ask any questions. I will check into the chat and see how we're doing. So, all right, so this morning, AMD released three new XT processors, the 3600 XT, the 3800 XT, and the 3900 XT. And basically what these are is performance increases over the standard X processors. And you can see that each one's a little different, that with the 3600 XT only and the 39 you get a 100% megahertz boost, and with the 3800 XT you get a 200 megahertz boost. But in addition to that, and the things that they don't really talk about here in any of their slides, is that they have also allowed the processor to boost longer. So when you're running one of these processors stock, it runs at this lower speed that's listed here, 3.8 or 3.9 gigahertz. And then when demand generates, it will boost up to a higher frequency. And these rated boost speeds are technically for only one of the cores. So you're talking about one of the 6, one of the 8, or one of the 12 cores. And the others boost at varying degrees. So we're now talking these boost higher, but they also boost longer. So what's interesting about this then is that, for a lot of people that may be okay to just run them stock. I don't like to do that, obviously. If I'm looking for value, I want to run these things for long term, but also get the most performance out of it. And that's one of the things that's always attracted me to AMD, was the ability to, have an overclocking processor. So here's the performance they claim that you'll get. You'll get from a 3 to a 7% over a 9900K, which is just a 10700K now. And the same thing on different versions of whether it's the 39, the 38, or the 36. You have different performance amounts, and they're comparing the 39 to a 9700 and the 36 to a 96. So I think this is a fair comparison. I think this really should be against this chip, and this should be against the 10900K. So they're obviously positioning things the way they want them to look good. And so what we're talking about again is a small performance increase in megahertz, but also a longer boost clock. So what AMD is really doing here is that over time, that since these processors came out a year ago today, is that they have had some maturity in their manufacturing. And so with that maturity in their manufacturing, they have now been able to get higher boost clocks. And that was really evident if you've watched my Ryzen 3600 overclocking video. I had one that's stable at 4.6 gigahertz and the other stable at 4.5. And that's just on regular, one's on an air cooler, the other's on a 240 millimeter liquid cooler. So with good cooling, not stock cooling, you're getting, the benefits of these things. So we're seeing some trickle down, but what AMD has done is that they're taking advantage of this by doing binning. And what binning is from a high level, not technical, there's articles out there if you really want to get technical about it. Basically what they're doing is they are saying, all right, we're going to manufacture these processors, and they start at the top and they see, can this processor meet our specifications for voltage and temperature and performance to be the best processor out there? Can it be a 3900 XT? If not, can it be a 3900X? Okay, if not that, we'll disable a couple, one of the chiplets, and now can it be a 3800X? No, can it, or an XT? Can it then be an X? Can it then be a 3700X? No, and they keep going down the stack until they've reached down to a 3300X or a 3100X. So that's really kind of how this bidding process works. So if you're, they were doing this before, and really with the 3800X and the 3600X, that, that a 3700X just is a slightly slower clock because it got binned as not as capable of being sold as a 3800X. They don't manufacture them different, they just are marketing them different. And then they write into that code that says that's what this chip is after it's passed those tests. So that's why on my 3700X, I've only been able to hit 4.4 gigahertz, but that's kind of what I knew and expected because I know there's a 3800X and now there's a 3800 XT. So knowing those things, you can set realistic expectations for what kind of performance you're going to get. Whereas with Intel, you still don't know what you're going to get. And sometimes, that's why there's companies like Silicon Lottery here that sell pre-bin chips. Intel does the same thing with binning, but they don't have as many variations within. So, you have your 10700K, for example, which is unlocked and can boost higher than, say, a normal 10700, which won't boost as high, and so Intel does it different. They lock those processors instead, so you don't have that opportunity to eke more performance out. But you can even buy them pre-tested, I guess is what Silicon Lottery does. I have a surprise. I got a video coming out this afternoon. My Core i7 10700K stable at 5.2 all core. So even better than this one that they're marketing right here for $550. So basically that's where we are with this. Now, the prices have obviously gone up, and you're also losing a cooler. Now, I don't ever use the stock coolers, but they're not terrible either. So consequently, it seems kind of odd to me that, AMD would now, decide to get rid of the cooler. And hello guys that are following, thank you. Appreciate you following, and hello from Istanbul. I've been there before. I love Istanbul. It's one of my favorite places in the world. Great baklava, excellent food, some of the most friendly people you'll ever meet. Anyway, so back to the discussion here. Let's talk a little bit about performance on some of these. So I didn't obviously get any of these chips. I mean, I'm not big enough for them to send me processors, but I can look at the stock performance and compare it to what I know some overclock performance looks like. So if we're looking at Cinebench as just a standard baseline, the new XT processor is still only scoring in the high, not even quite 4,000 out of the box on Cinebench R20. And I know with my overclocked 3600 at 4.5 gigahertz, I can get about 4150 on this score right here. So we're just basically seeing pre-built-in boosts. So if you're paying that kind of money, and again, we're talking a premium of 250 versus 100 and what are we at? $174. You can obtain similar performance with a $75 savings that you can put that money towards something else. That's an extra 16 gigs of RAM. That's, better graphics card, something else. So I'm not seeing real value of this 3600 XT or the 3800 XT. The same thing. You're talking $399 versus, what are we at here? $273. So, that's a big disparity in price between a a same 8-core 16 thread with a 4.4 all-core boost most likely versus we're talking this can boost up to 4.7 with 1 core. So let's say we hit 4.6, 4.7. So that's $125 roughly for not a huge amount of performance. And then on the same scale with the 3900 XT, we're talking about 4.7 up from 4.6. We're only talking 100% boost, and it's that's where I thought I had that up. $430 process. No, that's the 38. I thought I had it up. There it is. $422.68, and compared to 500. And let's see if we can even find one of these in stock. Newegg claimed to have them this morning, and Amazon doesn't even have them at all. Let's see if they're still in stock or not. And they are, and they want $500. So of the three, this might be the one I would consider, the 3900 XT, because now you are getting a better bin processor, because there isn't a slightly slower version of the 12 core. The 38 is an 8 core as opposed to the 39, which is a 12 core. So for $75, you are guaranteed that extra 100 megahertz of boost. But again, that's if your thermal design will allow it. This is not a guaranteed that you will hit this and over time will it maintain it. They're taking advantage of some things, but there we go. I think, for most people, I think you would, instead of spending $250 for this, $430 for this, I think Newegg was already sold out of these, if I remember right. Yep, they're sold out. Let's see if they have the 250s. Yes, they do. So the 3800 is sold out. I wouldn't spend $400 on this even if it was in stock. I would spend the extra money and spend the extra $22 and go for 12 cores with a higher boost clock already built into it. So, and you get a free cooler that you may or may not use. I wouldn't, but I would save my money and get this. We have some other issues too, and again, we're talking just comparing these. A 10700K sure scores 4985. The 4884 slightly, but when you overclock this on all cores, you're at about 51, which is about what this is. Same thing with this one right here. It's about 51. So very similar, if you look at the mentality of what are you going to do with this processor, if I'm planning on overclocking it and getting an all-core overclock, I'm probably going to get better performance than what I would get out of the box. Now, if I have no desire to do that, or I'm going to run a stock, well, these XTs don't come with a stock cooler, so that's not really possible. But I have no desire to overclock and I just want to run it with base settings, and I want the best performance I can get out of an AMD processor. Yes, these are okay values, and price-wise they are comparable to their competing chips that they are marketing them against from Intel. So with that understanding, there is a use case for some people. However, for most people, instead of buying the XT processors, I would really recommend not even getting an X. I would get, if you're looking for the best 6-core 12-thread processor for value on the market right now, it's this one right here. Hands down. Especially since you can take advantage of those new processes and get a fairly decent overclock. I mean, the stock is 4.2 boost. If you hit that on an all-core overclock, you got a fantastic performing system. Let's check the comments, see how people are doing. Again, thank you everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. And so let's also talk about then what other options are there out there, just looking at processors in general. For the similar money, you can get a 10600K compared to the 3700X system, but as soon as the PS5 and Xbox Series X come online, games are going to start to be optimized for 8 cores and 16 threads. And remember, both those systems use AMD processors inside, along with AMD discrete GPUs. You are going to see games starting to be optimized for AMD systems. And buying one now, you may not get the performance, the increase that you would on games with an Intel system, but I guarantee you will in the future. So, and certainly going 8 cores makes much more sense for the same money. Again, right now you won't see it. So if you want to save the money, the 3600 6 cores definitely the best bang for buck. And if you're really interested in just gaming, the 10700K is fantastic for this money. If you could find a 10900K, it would be amazing also, but not for $630. The one that I find really interesting as a proposition is this 10700, not the non-K model. When you can remove the power limits, it will boost, and that's kind of what AMD's been talking about this morning, that you can get an 80% longer boost clock, which basically means it boosts up high and the chip heats up, and as it reaches a thermal limit, it then starts to throttle it back down. And that's basically what Intel's doing here also, that when you remove that power limit, it lets it draw more power and boost for longer and higher, and if you can keep it cool, it will stay up there. Now, you're not going to be able to get a 5.2 gigahertz overclock, but you'll be able to see a solid 4.8, 4.7 gigahertz for an extended period of time. And that's for $330. That's not terrible. So, very interesting thoughts there. And I hope to test that here in the future. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Some other thoughts here. I'm thinking, for most people, having an XT processor is probably not the best route. And something else to consider is that you will need a BIOS update if you get one of these XT processors. So you're going to need something, a motherboard either with BIOS flashback or one that already supports it. And if you look at this timetable right here, this is just MSI as an example, and this seems to be applicable to most manufacturers. Some are a little bit faster than MSI. That you need to make sure your BIOS, if you're on a non 500 series board, so you're on a B450, X470, 3 something, you need to make sure you're on this AGESA 1006. And if you are not on it, the XT processor will not be supported. And on a 500 series, you need to be on a 1002 BIOS. And so if you look at the BIOSes out there, this is kind of the timeline MSI has projected for their motherboards. And if you look at something like my favorite B450 Tomahawk, they came out with the BIOS with the 1006 back here in June, so like 3 weeks ago now. So it does support it, but that doesn't mean any new motherboards right now would have it. In all likelihood, if you were able to find a B450 and then purchase it, it almost guaranteed will not have this BIOS. Fortunately, with BIOS flashback on this, you're able to flash the BIOS to its latest version without a processor in. But if you have another type of motherboard that doesn't support that, which there are a lot of them out there, as a matter of fact, BIOS flashback is pretty rare. Like on Asus, you have to have a higher end motherboard like an X570, the Crosshair Hero 8, it has it, but like my Strix F, you're kind of out of luck. So maybe my Strix F does have it. I don't know, I have to look into that. But Strix F, they just came out with a BIOS update a few days ago that includes this 1002. So up until and I'm still not even running that version. I'm still on this 0608 on this system I'm streaming on right now. So keep that in mind, that you will need a BIOS update in order for this to work. So if you're building a new system, make sure you take that into account, that the motherboard you're buying has the ability to flash the BIOS without a CPU in it. And also make sure that you're buying a motherboard that will support this. So don't be picking up one off eBay with a 300 series like a B350 or something like that. It eventually will get there, but not right now. Maybe. I mean, the 3000 series on the 300s is optional for motherboard manufacturers. Some like MSI are supporting it, but others don't. So keep that in mind while doing this. So I think really that's kind of all I have to say on the matter is that when you look at the price and you look at the performance you're going to get, I don't see a huge value in getting an XT processor. There are certain use cases where this will make sense, and for some people, just having the best is always what they want. And if you want to have the best chance to get the highest overclock, certainly get it. And of the three, I would say the 3900 XT is probably the best value when you consider it's just a $75 jump over a regular 3900, maybe 70 depending on your math. And again, these are US prices. Everywhere else in the world it depends on your availability and what you have, and different markets always make a different decision. But the 3800 XT, I mean, I didn't think the 3800X was a great value either, at $50 to $60 over a 3700X. Honestly, the difference in performance between those, you will see it in benchmarks, but unless you are making your living on your computer where you're doing rendering or something like that, you're probably not going to notice it. And those few frames a second in games, you probably won't notice them. You'd be better off spending that extra money, certainly between an XT 3800 and a 3700X. That's $125. That would upgrade you from a 2060 Super to a 2070 Super. That would upgrade you from a 2060 to a 5700 XT. That would upgrade you. I mean, there's so many other graphic card options that you would get such better performance out of and better value if you did that. And then down on the 3600 XT, again, that's a $75 bump. If you're not interested, if you're buying a 3600 and you're doing it for value with the hope of upgrading later, and that is something we do need to talk about, but let's finish this thought first. If you're doing it with you're trying to save every penny, you're better off spending that money on a better graphics card again. That $75 will upgrade you from a 1660 Super to a 2060 or to a 5700. All better options, a 5600 XT. You'll get so much better system performance out of that for that $75 than you would out of just this processor. But then that does bring the big elephant in the room, which is Ryzen 4000, which is coming in, it's July right now of 2020, and they're supposed to be coming in fourth quarter. Fourth quarter is just 2 more months away. So Ryzen 4000 series Zen 3 processors are supposed to provide a significant performance boost over current 3000 Zen 2 processors. So, as an upgrade, these chips don't really make much sense, especially if you can wait 2 months. I mean, that's not hard. If you're already running in a Ryzen system that will work with one of these processors, it will work with a 4000 series processor, most likely. If you're in a 300 series board, it's iffy if these will work there, and if they do, it won't work with the 4000, so you're looking at a complete upgrade. But if you're in a Tomahawk B450, you'd need a BIOS update for this to work, which is easy, but you'll also just need a BIOS update for the 4000s to work. So it makes sense to wait a little bit and spend this money on a 4000. Save it, put it in the bank, let it get some interest, maybe buy some AMD stock. That's certainly going to see some improvement, and then take that out and buy a 4000 series. And I think that's really what this boils down to, is that these processors were to save face and look good for what has been perceived as a threat from Intel with their 10th gen release, to kind of bridge that gap in performance until the 4000 series comes out. I haven't purchased one, and usually I'm one that will say, all right, if I will put my money where my mouth is, but certainly this one is one that I think I'm going to hold off on. If I were to get one, it would be a 3900 XT, just because, again, I like the idea of having the opportunity to have the highest overclock possible, up to 4.7, and see where an all-core overclock actually would take me instead of just with a 3900X. But certainly that's a lot of money to spend when I know here shortly that same $500 would get me a much better processor on a Ryzen 4000 series. So I think, I've talked for 25 minutes now, and I don't know what you guys think, but Thank you for joining me this morning, and certainly let me know what your thoughts are down below if you're watching this after the live stream. Um, Tell me what you think. Certainly like this video and share it with your friends. Help me grow the channel. And again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you. Oh, almost forgot. Last thing, this afternoon, new video coming out. Tune into it. If you're watching this after the fact, look for it. I test a Ryzen 7 3700X overclocked to 4.4 gigahertz versus an Intel Core i7 10700K overclocked to 5.2 gigahertz all core, and run it through a bunch of benchmarks. I think you guys will like the video. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.